Michelle, you're up. It's on page 10.
The passage written by the Universal House of Justice studied in the previous section suggests that the capability of accompanying a friend on the path of service is inseparable from a disposition centered on learning. We can examine this disposition at two levels, individual and collective. One, at the level of the individual, the House of Justice mentions that learning as a mode of operation requires that we all assume a posture of humility. Decide which of the following statements represent the kind of thoughts accompanying the mind of a person who has adopted the requisite posture. If only they would listen to me, we would get results much faster. They do not understand. I will just go ahead and do things my own way.
Nope.
She is capable but still young. There is nothing I can learn from her.
No.
I should listen carefully to what others have to say. There's always something to learn.
Yes.
Perhaps this approach is better than the one I had in mind. After all, there could be a number of approaches that will work well in this situation.
Yes.
I tried implementing the idea before and it did not work. Nobody else should try it.
No.
I tried implementing this idea before and it did not work, but there is no need to mention this to anyone. Let everyone learn from experience.
No.
I tried implementing this idea before and it did not work. Perhaps I can talk about my experience and see if it helps us find a fruitful approach.
Yes.
You may wish to add a few thoughts to this list. Here's some space. Note it down. 2. Does anybody have a few thoughts?
30 seconds. Yeah.
I just, one of my thoughts is patience for different learning styles. The different ways people learn is one of my something that I have to practice. I have to have patience that people are not all going to learn the same way that I learn. And so it's a learning for me to learn that, okay, this is the way that works for you. This is the way that you're going to learn. So that's one example that I come up with.
And it's really, I think, Susan, a test not only for a teacher, but for a manager or supervisor to figure out what's the best way that this person can learn, that we can teach that him or her the things that we want them to accomplish, because everyone's going to be different in the way that they absorb the information and then learn from it. You might have to have more hands-on with that person than someone else.
I've experienced that with I've trained quite a bit of apprentices, and there is a difference in learning. And I've actually went as far as, I mean, they're okay with books and that, and I'm guilty of this as well, but I actually went home and I cut a piece of wood, and I ran some wire on a board, and I hooked up a three-way switching system on a board. I was sitting there explaining to him, you have a 3-wire, this is your common, these are your travelers. It's as John knows, it's a pretty simple wiring setup. And he just couldn't figure it out, and I would go back and I'm troubleshooting. So I did this on a piece of wood. And man, once he saw it, it just clicked right in, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And where you go to another guy and say, hey, you know what, just pull away as a common, this and that, and, you know, this is what these wires do, and they get it. They get it really fast, you know. It's a hands-on thing. And that's kind of like how I am. That's what I'm installed.
One thing that comes to my mind is that if you want things to develop outside of the natural world, it takes human power. If you didn't include the human hand, you would have to depend on evolution, which is very slow. So if you have the human hand, if you have one individual, the individual's production would only be a certain quantity, and that's it. If you wanted to double the production, you would have to have 2 people. And of course, 3 or 4, if you have more people, you've got more power to produce things. And perhaps what we have up until date is the need to get people to operate in a common direction, which involves dominance and authority. And you need to have people under you to work in your way in order to get things done, which is the old school. I think with the coming of Baha'u'llah, what's required is a transformation of individuals and society so that rather than the dominance and the control that one person has. It's the transformation about the group effort and making sure that the group effort has a common understanding of direction, a common moral purpose, and the energy in order to carry that out as a collective.
So we can become a single organism, parts of one body.
We mentioned last week the importance of trust if you're working between two individuals. Maybe one's a student, one's the expert, but there has to be an element of trust that builds up, and that might take a little more time, but because each person's going to be different that you're going to be working with until you can define that. And once you can't get the trust, then I think the training becomes a little easier because their mind then is open. They're not as distrustful, which clouds the mind. You know, do I really want to believe this person? Can I pick it apart logically, what they're saying?
Umberto, would you
Okay.
do the next one?
Number 2.
Shoot.
The Universal House of Justice indicate that in the passage that the concept to a company has taken root in the community and been incorporated in our thinking. A culture has been greatly strengthened in which learning is the mode of operation. At the collective level, then, the posture of learning must manifest itself in certain characteristics that distinguish the culture of the community. Decide which of the following statements reflect the culture of a community in which learning about how to participate in building a divine civilization can take place. First one say continuous, consistent, and focused effort within every area of activity is universally valued, and freneticism is avoided.
What's that mean, freneticism? Freneticism is.
Freneticism.
Thank you.
Fanaticism.
What does that mean?
Freneticism.
It's wildly excited or active, frantic.
Frantic activity.
Frenetic.
Just like Michelle demonstrated.
Crazy.
This is freneticism.
So, is that something of a community that avoids freneticism and consistent, continuous, and focused effort is valued? Is that a kind of community that is, the question is what we're supposed to decide. Which statements reflect a culture of a community where learning about how to participate in building a divine civilization can take place? Where a culture of learning, a community that is learning. Does that one yes or
Yes.
no?
I think that yes.
Okay.
Yes. The accumulated knowledge gained by various groups, each working systematically in a specific area of endeavor, is respected and the community continuously draws on their growing experience. Yes. In the arena of action, pitting on approach against another is prevalent.
No.
No. In the name of evaluation, every experience is minutely dissected and criticized. No. The short-lived excitement and momentary disappointment that stem from narrowly defined notions of success and failure are generally avoided.
No.
I think that no, right?
So they're avoiding,
Because failure are generally avoided is something that is, failure is,
they want to avoid the
It's just a
short-lived
weird way that sentence is worded, okay? It's worded in a weird way. Those things are generally avoided that are listed. So is that a culture that is learning well? Yeah, right?
Short-lived excitement and momentary disappointment is generally avoided.
Yeah.
Based on narrow,
Definitions of success and failure. So it's not a community that has narrow definitions of success and failure. And And so usually that community is avoided. That was kind of a weird example.
The thing that came to my mind is sometimes if you're working on a project and you've got lots of ideas, the ones that really aren't a very good approach to it, then you have other ideas that have a more positive approach. After you get an idea to compare them, then you see which ones need to be avoided. So I'm thinking that maybe those negative ones, the ones you wouldn't want to pick, maybe should be out there so we can say, oh no, that would lead to something we don't want. So I guess I voted that you probably need to see both sides of the coin before you make up your mind.
I think
The,
it should be two statements.
Yes.
Yeah, it should be. It is worded
Yeah.
in a way that's confusing.
I just refuse to answer it.
There was
The
a
rebel amongst us.
there was a recognized father of something of the concept of quality control, and he was from the United States. His name was Deming, and the guy was really quite a philosopher in terms of organizational development. One of the sayings is that if you really want the company to progress, you remove fear out of the organization. So in terms of criticism, I agree with you, Jim. I think criticism is needed in order to correctly analyze the problem, but it's the spirit in which the criticism is made. Is it?
Critique.
Are you going to be doing that to establish a fear, or are you doing that for literally the best wishes for the organization?
And I think the Japanese got that from Deming and took it back home, and they were quite successful with it.
And we brought it back here.
Yeah,
Yes.
we brought it back here, made a circle.
Yes. The expectation that every activity is to be carried out in an idealized state of perfection is allowed to hamper universal participation.
No.
No. Long-term commitment to actions is the norm.
Yes.
Mhm. This, how we pronounce salutary. The salutary and combined effect of diverse acts of service carried out with a common overarching framework by a growing number of individuals and groups is prized.
Yeah.
Carried out.
Yes.
Yes. Discussions among individuals, groups, and institutions are driven by the desire to explore, to gain fresh insights, and to advance. Yes.
Yes. Do we have any other statements that we might think that we want to add? One comes to mind that Jennifer encouraged us to do at our cluster meeting the other night, and that was celebrate. A community that celebrates successes together is one that is in a learning mode, right? I mean, if you reach a goal, you celebrate. That's a good thing.
Yes.
I wrote in my book, respect and appreciation for one another leads to a united effort to achieve the goals